The media are never dumber than when we report on the minimum wage. Workers got a raise, one paper reported. They'll be shouting, "Ole." Well, such reports assume that if politicians declare that workers should get a raise, they will. But this ignores the unintended consequence. Minimum wage laws kill off the entry-level jobs most needed by poor people. That's why gas stations no longer employ teenagers to wash your windshield. The employer says at those higher government-mandated wages, I can't give a beginner a chance. These losses are harder to see, but they're widespread. A few companies close because they can't afford the higher wages. Another never expands. Most importantly, some businesses never open. The people who were never hired don't complain because they don't know who to blame. They don't even know that they were harmed. They're the unseen victims. Victims of the preening politicians. But the pals keep passing even higher minimums. Living wage laws, they call them. In Washington, D.C., companies that get government contracts must pay employees at least $11.75 per hour. In Manchester, Connecticut, it's $14. Sounds good to the winners. But if a minimum wage really does help workers, why be so cheap? Why only raise it to $14 or $7.50? That's the new national minimum. Why not $100 an hour? At that level, even the politicians understand that workers would be hurt. But the principle's the same at all levels. Supply and demand should set wages.
The minimum wage has been destructive of young people, particularly black youngsters, but yet we're criticized, and the people who support a minimum wage, the intellectuals who support it, are shown to be compassionate and caring.
That's right. In fact, the last year in which black unemployment was lower than white unemployment was the year before the first minimum wage law, which, as you well know, was the Davis-Bacon Act.
Oh yes, and for those out there who don't know the Davis-Bacon Act is a law that says that on all federal construction projects, the prevailing wage must be paid, and the prevailing wage is always interpreted, I think illegally by the Labor Department, as being the union wage or higher. And the purpose, actually, Tom, the stated purpose of the Davis-Bacon Act that was written in March 31st in 1931, the stated purpose was to protect white workers, construction workers, from having to compete with lower wage black construction workers.
Oh, absolutely. And very similar things happened in Canada in the 20s when they passed minimum wage laws to keep white workers from having to compete against Japanese workers. And as you also well know, in South Africa earlier in the century.
That's absolutely right. Matter of fact, in South Africa, I wrote a book called South Africa's War Against Capitalism, and I give quotation after quotation of racist unions in South Africa being the major supporters of minimum wage laws for blacks. And matter of fact, they call it the
civilized workers.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And so they recognized that if they could raise the wage, contractors would hire white workers instead of black workers.
Yeah, the minimum wage law is very similar to a tariff on international trade. That is, the purpose of a tariff is to raise your competitors' prices to the point where you price them out of the market. And that's exactly the same thing with the minimum wage. That you raise the price of low wage labor to the point where people won't hire them, and therefore the higher wage laborers benefit.
That's right. And you mean tell me, there are other examples of this, that is American labor unions and as well intellectuals, they support environmental laws in India, environmental laws in many underdeveloped countries. and why? To raise the cost of doing business with them.
Well, yes, and well, of course, they are non-discriminatory. They want to raise these costs everywhere they possibly can. The real problem is that they don't see these things in terms of trade-offs. They arbitrarily pick something that they call a good thing, and they pay no attention to the cost of that good thing, either in money or in terms of all the other good things that are going to be harmed by putting in whatever they happen to be in favor of.